It's League on Lock. That's Mark. My name is Eric, and we're rolling on to the top two for the power rankings in the LEC. The biggest offseason move in Europe, probably, I don't even really know if it's arguable at this point, is obviously Caps going to G2, Perks swapping to AD carry. But even though towards the end of spring and summer, you might be saying they have the two best carries in the entire Western scene. For right now, they're coming in at number 2 on our power rankings because anytime there's a major role swap like that, you know there's still some serious question marks around the team, and I still think Jankos can be a question mark in the jungle.
I need to see more from this G2 roster.
Or anything.
I need to see this machine in motion in order to give it that stamp of approval to be number 1. And until then, they will be our number 2 team heading into the LEC season, even with this incredible shakeup of snagging away Caps from Fnatic and having Perks role swap down to the ADC position.
I think there's no question that this team has the highest ceiling of any team in EU because you could potentially be saying at some point in 2019, best top laner, best mid. I still don't think I could say Perks best AD carry, but he might be. You might be saying that at the end of spring. And if you have the best in every role, or at least those 3 roles, your team is obviously going to be absolutely disgusting.
Right, and we're going to spend a lot of time, of course, talking about Perks and this whole role swap situation. But even before then, you have to look at this lineup and be excited if you're a G2 fan, because when you're talking about power players here in the European region, Wonder jumps out right away as a power top laner that can hold his own against some of the best internationally and can dish out the damage on some of these carry composition champions, and that he is absolutely a star player that you need to be game planning for.
And if you look back to last year, G2, much like Misfits, had a fantastic start, go 6-0, and then they completely disappoint in the playoffs. They get 3-0'd by Misfits, run it back in the regional gauntlet, squeak in to the World Championship, and as you remember over their history, they can never get out of groups. They make their huge changes heading into 2018, and they finally get out of groups, and not only do they do that, they upset the tournament favorites in RNG. So it was an insane year for 2018, but not insane enough to keep the same roster. Hjarnan and Wadid out, and they bring in a new bot lane in Perks and Mickey. So big changes for G2. You feel bad. I still feel bad for Hjarnan and Wadid getting cut, but
there's no doubt that you got to feel bad for those guys there in this situation. But it's unfortunately, you got to say, hey, this is a professional scene now, and there's no room for feelings here to be hurt. It doesn't matter. It's all about business, and the business here for G2 was finding a way to improve, and getting the likes of Caps on this team and still keeping Perks here had to be the option for them.
Well, business is booming now for G2 with 2 of the probably 3 biggest names in the LEC on their roster now, with Caps, with Perks. There's a lot of hype around this roster. There's going to be a lot of expectations, and expect a whole lot of flame coming their way if they don't reach those expectations. But again, on paper, this team looks absolutely insane, but too many question marks for us to put them in there at that number 1 spot. And we've talked about Perks as an AD carry for countless times in the offseason because it was the biggest move, and it's all about funnel comp. He's played these AD carries before. Lucian mid, Corki mid. That's going back not just 2018. That was meta in 2016. He was playing Corki mid in his first split. 2017 Lucian mid was pretty popular. And how often are we going to see him play those off-meta AD carries? We're seeing Cassiopeia in the LCK. Victor Bot's been a thing. Yasuo, one of his favorite champions. We're probably going to see him play some of those at some point.
Right, and I think that's a situation that does lead into Perks having maybe a bit of an advantage heading into this year. His familiarity with those mages, with a champion like a Yasuo, things like that, that familiarity that he does have should translate to some performances that you might be able to catch teams off guard with your draft on what you're taking for him. But as you say, the important thing is here, his experience a lot of the time here with these marksman style champions has been on a funnel comp strategy, and that is fundamentally different from playing an ADC style champion. He's playing those marksmen down in the bottom side when you're having to play with your support partner, and as well how you're having to play these team fights. It's a different story entirely. So seeing Perks translate those skills, his experiences on these champions into that is what we're waiting to see the actual result from.
And I'm expecting early on, at least in these splits, for Mickey to not be leaving bottom lane very much, because Perks is not going to be accustomed to laning 1v2 or just kind of being a wave clear bot, because when do you ever do that in solo queue? And that's pretty much his only experience. Obviously, they've been scrimming, but I mean, we don't see scrims. I don't know what to take out of scrims. And historically, Perks in solo queue tends to just kind of go for crazy outplays and play a whole lot differently than he does in professional matches. So we'll see how that translates. But I don't see Mickey roaming a whole lot. It's going to be a lot of 2v2 in the bottom lane for G2.
And that's going to be interesting here, because when you do talk about the strengths that are available here in the LEC, the pairings that you're going to be going up against here in this bottom side, a lot of them actually are very strong in the 2v2. That is what they're going to be specializing in.
Experienced.
And I want to bring up the likes of a Hans Sama and Gorilla, that duo that you're going to have to be going up against, and the Misfit roster that seems to be ready to try and push for one of those top spots here in the LEC. Well, you're going to have to be able to outdo them 2v2, and that seems to be a tough task to ask for, given for a brand new, quote-unquote brand new, air quotes, ADC with Perks here making this role swap. I think that is absolutely going to be a question mark that is left to be answered by the gameplay.
Yeah, and again, all these other bottom lanes are just so much more experienced. You look at Fnatic, for example, Reckless and Hylissang, a full year under their belt together. Hans Sama and Gorilla are new as a bottom lane together, but Gorilla's been around for years and at the highest level, and Hans Sama for a good chunk of the summer split. We were saying he's actually the best AD carry because Reckless wasn't playing or was playing Janna and Karma in their first week. So for a lot of the summer split, Hans Sama was the best AD carry in EU. And I'm hard pressed, especially without any games played on the competitive stage, putting Perks ahead of those two.
Right, I'm not going to say that he's ahead of those two right away.
Not yet.
There's no way that I can bring that up. I can disrespect the likes of Reckless or Hans Sama that way to put him there. But I do absolutely believe that when you're looking at Perks and the type of skill that he has and how he should be able to adapt and learn in the early parts of this split to becoming a better ADC specifically here, I know that will help G2 and that will help his career further along here. I absolutely expect him to be in that top 3 towards the end of the split here. Just can't start him there.
Yeah, I mean, he's got to earn it. He's actually got to play some games before we can make that statement. So Perks, a question mark in the bottom lane. And Jankos, consistencies in the jungle, another big question mark for G2. He's got some high highs and some pretty darn low lows. That's why they're coming in at number 2. But at the end of the spring split, still expecting G2 to be potential title contenders.